Hello, you are listening to the Marriage Underdogs radio show. I'm your host, Chris A. Matthews. And once again, I have another phenomenal guest. And yes, you got it right. It is an LMFT. I would like to introduce you all to Rosa Khorshidi, who is a Ph.D. candidate and also an LMFT supervisor as well through the American Association of Marriage and Family Therapy. How are you doing?
Good, good. I'm so excited to be here with you, Chris. Thank
I
you for having me.
I'm so happy to have you. And I always start with this question to all the guests for you just to kind of give us the story behind what led you into this field of marriage and family therapy.
Oh, that's quite a story. You might not believe it. It's kind of a drama story, more like Hollywood movies, but it is true. So I'm talking about almost 50 years ago. I was a preteen on a hot summer day in Tehran, capital city of Iran, a hyperactive 10 or 11-year-old running around with the neighbors' kids and felt thirsty. So I stormed out inside to grab some water. The kitchen's empty, but the radio's on. That was my mother's old habit that drove my dad crazy. And suddenly I heard this guy, don't know his name to this date, talking about treating children right in the family.
Hmm.
I kid you not, Chris. I froze like a popsicle. I felt like time had stopped there for me, forgot all about my thirst, everything. I stood there like those deers on the roads, my eyes wide open, jaw practically down to the floor, and I felt like my ears were growing to an elephant size and, absorbing every single word that he was
And this
talking.
was at 11 years old.
10 or 11. Yes.
So it was really a divine calling, it sounds like at that point.
It was a magic calling. And by the end of his talk, I was absolutely spelled. I
Hmm.
didn't know who this man was or what exactly he was talking about, but boy, did I know one thing. I wanted to be him. What was him? No clue. So
Absolutely.
I ran to my room, forgot about everything, and started imitating him, recording my voice, tears dropping down my face because I was spelled. I told you it's too dramatic. I have goosebumps all over it right
Hmm.
now. So, fast forward, I started education and counseling back in Iran and started working with families and children around 32 years ago. Very successful, and boom, my big leap to America in 2009, only to find out that none of my fancy degrees, my licenses, my certificates were worth the paper they were printed on.
Hmm.
It was shocking. So, what should I do? Well, at 46, I returned to school, UMass Boston. I studied marriage and family therapy, got my master's degree, my license in marriage and family therapy, and now I'm a PhD candidate in couple therapy, specializing in couple therapy.
Hmm.
As you said, I am an approved AAMFT supervisor and a certified emotionally focused therapist and supervisor. Quite an adventure.
Yeah. Now, I want to unpack that briefly. What led you to America? And when you got here, talk about the grit that it takes to start over essentially professionally from an academic lens after having, decades of practice and experience already.
Yeah, so I came here, you hear the stories of Iran all the time. If you take a look at the news, it is not a country to, to grow children in safely and securely. So I came here. I didn't have any problem in Iran. Actually, I had a very successful business, and I came here because of my children's future, and I
Mhm.
never regretted it. And I, in general, I'm not a person to give up easily.
Mhm.
So I was told at the beginning, because I had a hand on data and statistics, I almost found a job in that field, but I'm very happy that they didn't hire me. So I was forced to go back to school, and it was very difficult, but I did it.
Definitely. Now, for those that may be listening who are more seasoned and are not the traditional college age you would imagine one being, what would you say to them when they're contemplating, is it worth it or not to go back?
Absolutely worth it. Absolutely worth it. Even I repeated some courses with the exact same, you know, books that we were taught in Iran, but I don't regret it. I grew a lot out of this experience. You know, if you look at every challenge as an opportunity, it makes it easier for you. I'm not claiming that it was easy, but as you said, it was definitely worth it.
Definitely. And there's so many couples that are going to benefit from you taking that leap of faith and going back to school. You mentioned in your introduction that you specialize in EFT and emotional focused therapy.
Yes.
Uh, I know it's one of the developers is Dr. Sue Johnson, who
Mhm.
wrote the famous book Hold Me Tight, and she talked
Yes, I'm
about
going to talk about it.
that. Yeah, okay. So with the first next question being to dive into EFT, we want to be mindful of the fact that a lot of the people listening may not have the clinical expertise as you and I and had coursework on it. But to break it down from layman's terms, identifying and addressing the negative cycles or interactions that couples go through. And we've heard in counseling, a couple will say, we keep having that same fight over and over and over again.
Yes, yes.
Break down for us the destructive patterns and then get into how attachment theory is important to understand when processing the pattern, or for those couples listening, having that same destructive fight over and over again, or that
Mhm.
issue you just can't get past.
Yes, yes. So thank you for this brilliant question. Before I dive into that, I need to take a detour through the world of attachment theory, as you named, by Dr. John Bowlby. And we need some background history here, if you don't mind. So he was born in 1907 into the lap of English aristocracy.
Mhm.
Bowlby's family was very traditional, British traditional. His dad was a top-notch surgeon, and his mom was a high-class stay-home related to the royal family. Little John was the youngest or the second youngest of six or seven. I don't exactly remember.
Mm.
Okay, so dad was almost absent. He left before they woke up and returned after the kids were tucked in.
Mhm.
And mom, well, she only had afternoon tea with her children in a formal traditional way. And if
Mm.
any of the children would misbehave during those ceremonies, no tea time for them for a while.
Mm.
Good news, being well off meant the kids had a live-in nanny who played mom for them. Bad news for little John, when he was around 3 or 4, his beloved nanny named Mimi got fired.
Mm.
Later on, he told his wife that that was like losing a mom for me to a death, but
Right.
nobody addressed it as dramatic as it was. And also at the tender age of 7, off he went to a boarding school. He
Mm.
later admitted he wouldn't send his dog to that school. So a lot of attachment, wounds and injuries he
And
grew up
attachment
with.
is really something from a male like father child relationship between 0 and 5. That's a very critical stage of attachment. And I'm glad that
Yes,
you give
it
that
is.
history from 0 to 7 for John, the author
Yes,
of attachment theory.
you got it. Yeah. Now we want to unfold how his childhood led him to become the godfather of attachment theory. So we're talking about early 60s in London Royal Children's Hospital, where Dr. Bowlby was a child psychiatrist. Picture this. It's a time when a sneeze could spell disaster, and there were lots of medical mysteries in terms of diseases and medications. So
Mhm.
as a result, children hospitals rules were extremely strict. If a kid got sick, the hospital staff would snatch them up, leaving parents waving goodbye at the door, no matter what the age of the child was. Mothers were allowed an hour per week, only mothers, to
Per
visit
week.
per week, to visit their little ones in gears like ICU nurses. And imagine just an hour a week. And ironically, I was hospitalized back then to take out my tonsils, and I experienced this. I was 3 or 4 years old. Bowlby starts noticing something. There were patterns in how toddlers responded to the comings and goings of their moms. Group 1. Those toddlers would shed a few tears, but they were consolable. And when mom came back for the visit, they'd leap into her arms, soak up the love, and then off to play with the toy that mom brought. Then group number 2. Oh boy, those kids took separation very hardly. A huge meltdown when mom left, impossible to console, and another huge tantrum when they come back, clinging, punching, tossing the toy, you name it. And lastly, group 3, those little ones acted like they didn't really care. Moms left, they were sad. Moms returned, they were sad, but no big emotions. So Bowlby called his residents and developed checklists, lots of observations, and attachment theory was born. What it says, the core concept is, please listen carefully, everyone, that we are all born and hardwired for at least one rock solid relationship where our attachment figure is accessible, responsive, and engaged, ARE, especially in times of distress and need. And this need is there from the cradle to the grave. It's like the golden rule of human connection. And here's what it gets juicy. Bowlby asserts that the way our primary caregivers respond to this $1 million question, are you there for me? You remember ARE? So it's the start of this $1 million question. Are you there for me when I need you? The answer to this question determines our attachment style.
And
If they're
go back one more time, because when you talk about the ARE, say the ARE one more time.
accessible, responsive, and engaged. When I need you.
So when couples are listening to this now, and
Yeah,
they
and it's not just about children.
accessible, responsible,
And engaged in my needs. You know, you're engaged enough in my emotional needs and know how to.
Sometimes couples stop at 8. They're accessible,
But
and
not,
they might even be responsive, but you
yes,
have to have the engaged part as well. So that's all
exactly,
3. And then R,
exactly.
accessible,
Yes,
responsible, engaged.
ARE, yeah,
ARE. Are you
yeah.
there for me?
Mm-hmm. So if the answer to that question, if they're consistently there most of the time, you're likely to develop a secure attachment style, our first group. Only there sometimes insecure, anxious attachment style, the second tantruming group. Almost never there, insecure, avoidant attachment style, our third group. Later on,
Say those groups one more time. So you have the first group is if someone
first group
here,
is
they're
secure attachment because their parents, their mom, was almost always there for them. Insecure, anxious attachment style, the second group, the tantruming group, because their parents were sometimes there, sometimes not. So they cannot trust. The third group, insecure, avoidant attachment style, they are never there. Maybe they are physically there. I'm not talking about children who are abandoned in orphanages or something. Sometimes parents physically are there. They take good physical care of the children, but emotionally they're not there. And they learn that I'm on my own. even as a 2-year-old. That's very sad. And we will skip the fourth group that later on was added to be mindful of time. All right, now keep everything in mind. Let's talk about what I like to call the relationship Godzilla monster, the negative cycle of interaction. And if you're kind enough to me, please share the slide.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Pull it up. Just have it.
Okay.
Share my screen.
Do you see anything? I don't.
Hold on 1 second. We're gonna get it. Have a time delay. It's interesting when you have something ready to go, and then when it's time to have it,
Yeah, it
it all
happens all the time.
it all happens, right?
Yeah, technology.
What's that called? Murphy's Law. If something go wrong, when it can go wrong, it typically
Mm-hmm.
goes wrong. Here we go. We
Okay.
got it. We got it now. We'll share screen. Here we go.
Oh, great. Yeah. So, for those of you who are a visual learner like me, let's take a look at this slide. This one gets a diagram made by the EFT trainer Dr. Scott Woolley in 2014. It's practically the Mona Lisa of EFT. What it shows up is that in the journey of relationship, we often, not always, spot two sides, the pursuer and the withdrawer. Sure, sometimes you get two pursuers or two withdrawers, but not very often. This is the most common dynamic. And just for kicks, let's say typically, not always, the lady is the pursuer and the gentleman is the withdrawer. Of course, no stereotype is universal. And um, let's dive into a classic sitcom scenario. Meet Mary and John. John, our withdrawer, returns home after a long day and drops a casual, "Hi, honey." Mary responds, but then she asks the question, "Did you buy the milk?" No, he forgot. Mary, in a moment of drama, says, "Of course you forget, because you don't care," accuses him of not caring. John first tries to explain, but as he gets more defensive, Mary turns up the heat. Eventually, John's having enough, withdraws. Classic exit stage. Over there, we have Mary, who is angry and believes that he doesn't care, and John feels numb and believes that she just enjoys arguments. Now, this little tango of their fuel the fire, creating a loop, this infinity symbol that you see. That's their dance floor. And it goes round and round and round. It and what is this mysterious red line? It's what separates the surface, the visible and reactive, from the vulnerable and the deep ocean, from the underneath of emotions. It is
The
the
iceberg.
Yeah, it is the EFT secret recipe. Above this line, it's all "he doesn't care and she always nags," but what's bubbling underneath? Fear of loneliness, sadness, and a craving for connection. Traditional therapists might say, "Mary, you need to work on the anger." And "John, buddy, time to speak up." Or you guys need communication trainings. But an EFT therapist digs deeper, uncovering the soft, squishy fears under the tough exterior. We're talking about deep seated attachment needs to be loved unconditionally, to be heard and valued. And let me tell you, when those needs are met, the whole milk fiasco becomes a moment of connection rather than conflict. Like, John, when you forget what is important to me, it really breaks my heart. And hey, Mary, when you keep repeating that I don't care, it really hurts. And who fights in those situations? This cycle is universal. The content might be different, but the process is the same. And all we need to do is to stop the cycle and dive deeper.
Now
This
let's pause for a second, because
Mhm.
when it comes to attachment needs, we're entering a relationship with a history based on Mary or John's family of origin. Their attachment wounds or needs, excuse me, have been developed, and
Yes.
then those needs are then wounded by way of an action,
Mhm.
and then the reaction creates the cycle. So it sounds like when working with an EFT therapist or licensed marriage and family therapist who has some understanding of EFT, it's not just on the surface of we just need to communicate better. And you know,
Yes.
when couples call, that's the first thing they say, oh, we just have to communicate. What
Exactly.
you say is when we go deeper beyond just the surface of communication, which is a skill,
Mhm.
we're now tapping and targeting the emotion and the attachment need. So your partner understands what to communicate, because you can
Yes.
communicate, but you have to know what to communicate and why you
Exactly.
need to communicate a particular way. And in this
Mhm.
situation, John would communicate based on Mary educating him that when forgetting the milk, it wasn't just about the milk, it was more in alignment, maybe just hypothetically speaking, with a childhood event where she was forgotten about. It could be, I use this example for myself. My dad was always late picking me up from sports practices. He would be the
Mhm.
last one coming in, and I
Oh,
would be under the pole of the light at nighttime waiting to get picked up from a sports practice. And I now, felt as an adult, if my wife forgets me, like I think my car was being serviced and she forgot to pick me up. I became that kid waiting on my dad to pick.
yes, exactly.
Yeah. So it
Exactly.
sounds like that's what you're describing.
Yes.
And talk about why it's important to have the training. When you think about EFT and having the skills, go deeper into that, because I don't want the public to hear this and think that you can go to just any generic professional to get this content.
No, actually, getting your EFT certificate, I don't want to exaggerate and say this is like another master's degree, but it is tough. It is lengthy. It takes about 2 years, and it's very good that they have a central organization in Ottawa, Canada, ICIFT, International Center for Excellence in Emotionally Focused Therapy. Dr. Sue Johnson is, running the organization, and they have very, very organized, and they keep it up to date. Trainings, a 4-day externship, then 4 2-day core skills, lots of, supervision, and then you have to submit something like a capstone to the ICEF to get certified as a therapist. Then you can apply to become a supervisor. And then the trainers, they are like gods. It's very difficult to go that far. So
I'm
we
glad,
have,
I'm glad that you mentioned it, because therapists that are listening can understand the value, but also the general public can understand when you see certain credentials and you hear a professional describe having the EFT training,
yes,
you're now aware that the same way Rosa has the skills to break down emotional patterns and attachment wounds, that professional will be able to do so as well. as we transition, just for sake of time, I know I'm trying to speed this up, Rosa, but we could definitely have you come back again. I want you to dive deep into helping the couples understand certain exercises or different things that they can do or you recommend to help some gain some awareness of these cycles.
Before that, if you allow me, can I tell you how we help the couple overcome this Godzilla?
Absolutely. That's
Okay.
definitely important.
Yeah, thank you. So
And then
as you
you want to
said,
continue to keep the slide up?
no, I don't need it anymore.
All right.
Okay, thank you. So as you said, emotionally focused therapy, or EFT for short, is like the rock star of couple therapy. Picture this. It's got the most scientific research studies to support the process and the outcome, both. We're talking about a success rate of 75 to 90% in couple therapy and a very small relapse rate. Now, EFT has a clear roadmap. We even had a cheat sheet here, stages and steps. Sometimes in the middle of the sessions, I just take a look to see where I am at right now. So every session, you know where you are at and what is the goal for this session and what are the steps to get there. So we have 3 stages and 9 steps. It starts with stage 1, de-escalation the cycle that we saw.
Mhm.
Imagine it's like couples therapy detox. Like,
Like crisis intervention as well, too.
yes, it
Yeah.
is. It is. It is. Sometimes it is a huge crisis.
Mhm.
So we help couples spot their dance moves in this tricky tango, the cycle, recognize their steps and their partners too. It's all about understanding why each partner makes the moves that they do and the emotions, attachment needs driving those moves.
And when we can find out why our partner does what they do, we
Exactly.
can start to extract the problem from the person. We may
Exactly.
think we're the problem, but it may be beyond just us. It could be associated with family of origin or something that
Exactly.
your partner is experiencing internally, and
Yes.
it's not just you being the problem.
Yes, exactly. So once the tango slows down and the couple isn't stepping on each other's toes anymore, we move to stage 2. This is where we get to the heart and soul. Each partner explores and shares their deepest needs and fears and listen to the other one,
Mm,
not in a reactive way, in an understanding way. There's a lot of empathy in those sessions, understanding each other's fears and needs. And for our grand finale, stage 3, we're talking integration and consolidation. They're rewriting the story of their relationship, finding new solutions to their old problems. And the best part, by the end of therapy concert, many couples realize that the stuff that they used to fight over at first doesn't matter anymore. They're
mhm,
ready for their encore as a stronger, more in tune couple.
mm.
Now, your question, what do I suggest? Obviously, I highly recommend seeking an experienced EFT couple therapist that you can Google. ICEFT has a directory of the licensed ones in your neighborhood. But before that, a great resource is the book Hold Me Tight by Dr. Sue Johnson, the developer of the EFT model. It has sold over 1 million copies and is available in many, many languages. I think more than 30 languages.
Yeah, it's a prerequisite. A lot of the couples that I work with, I ask them to get Hold Me Tight because
Oh, good.
although I'm not a certified trained EFT therapist, part of my master's program required that we shadowed EFT therapists and
Oh,
we
good.
learned that model intensively. So I utilize the steps in what
Mm-hmm.
I in my practice.
Good,
But
good.
the
I'm happy to
research that
hear
you
that.
mentioned, it's
Mm-hmm.
validated to have a high success rate.
Mm-hmm. And I suggest couples read it together, the book, and engage in the exercises it offers.
And they have the audio version as well for those
Yes, they
who are not
do.
to look
And
at the hard
and
copy.
the person who is narrating it is Dr. Johnson herself.
Like, yep, absolutely.
Yeah. And additionally, participating in a Hold Me Tight weekend retreat, which
Mhm.
is often available both locally and online, can be really helpful. I have had a couple of them, but not anymore. These retreats are typically led by EFT supervisors and provide a powerful experience in understanding and applying EFT principles. If still further assistance is needed, couples should look for a licensed couple therapist and LMFT certified in EFT within their state.
Absolutely. Wow, Rosa, this has been so helpful. I appreciate you taking the time to break down the history of attachment theory and the author of attachment theory. A lot of people are aware of attachment theory, but we don't take time to understand the development and to gain a perspective from the author when it comes to his own family of origin was very helpful. Then
Mm-hmm.
going through the cycle and most couples who've had conflict, I'm sure if not all couples, can relate to what we shared in the cycle, but we just call it a misunderstanding or
Exactly.
miscommunication. But it goes deeper. And then last but not least, given the resources on how to identify a trained licensed marriage and family therapist for starters, and then two, one who's taking the necessary steps to go beyond and obtain
Mm-hmm.
certification as an
Mm-hmm.
EFT specialist.
Mm-hmm.
Rosa, I know you're out of the Massachusetts area. Are you currently accepting clients? And if so,
Absolutely, I am. I
where can
am.
people meet you and find you at?
If you Google my name, Rosa Khorshidi, LMFT, and I can spell out my website, it's rosakhorshidi.lmft.com. And I have always availability, not because I don't have enough applicants, but because EFT is short term. We
Talk
will,
about that real quick. Talk about
yeah,
that's a
it
big
is.
question. How many sessions and usually
You
pricing?
know,
What's that look like?
typically it is somewhere between 8 to 20 sessions if trauma is not involved. If one of the partners or both of them are, impacted by childhood or later on trauma, we need to go slower. But I've had couples who I discharged after 5 sessions. Unbelievable. And I have another couple, both highly traumatized. I've been working with them for 3 years.
Wow.
So, but typically the average is 12 to 15 sessions. Yeah.
Definitely. And I can relate to that. Yeah, as LMFT practicing professional as well, I share with couples that it's typically between 8 to 12 sessions is going to
Yeah.
be the realm. And what allows marriage and family therapists to move quicker as brief-based clinicians is
Mm-hmm.
our training. When
Yes,
you have a clinician with a higher level of training and the repetition, we can see and identify patterns quicker and we
exactly.
can move you through the cycle faster than just a clinician
Mm-hmm.
that may not have the specialty training.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Attachment theory is our flashlight
It
through
is.
the tunnel. When you are skillful in attachment theory and attachment oriented models, which EFT is absolutely one of them, everything makes sense so easily. And it's completely judgment free, you know, non pathologic. So it's all about attachment. And with this cycle, we externalize the problem. So when couples go to a, a clinician who is not an LMFD, the problem is that they are, with all due respect, they are not trained systemically. You know, they are trained to find what is wrong in an individual. Is it depression? Is it trauma? Is it anxiety? Is it, I don't know, mood swing? But that's not how it works in a system. For us, marriage and family therapists, relationship is a system. When the system is dysfunctional, we engage the whole system, not pointing finger at one. Oh, you have anger issues. Go work on yourself. Or you have anxiety issues. Or you cannot speak up. You have so and so issues. No,
We treat the system as its own entity
exactly.
itself, right?
Exactly.
So marriage and family
Exactly.
therapists don't treat two separate people.
No,
The relationship is our client.
exactly. Exactly.
And I make referrals for the partners that I see to obtain individual counseling. So
Mhm.
there's a room and space for individual counseling. Uh,
Exactly.
so we don't want to, alienate any other professional, but just having the understanding that the letters behind the names means
Mhm.
it
Yes,
gives you a roadmap or an idea of how that clinician was trained.
exactly. And it's been 3, 4 years. EFT has been focused on couple therapy for almost 40 years, but it's been 3, 4, 5 years that it has other branches: EFFT, emotionally focused family therapy, and EFIT, EFIT, emotionally focused individual therapy. And EFIT, I'm nowadays I'm so interested and focused, and I've been trained in EFIT. Chris, it makes miracles working with trauma and individuals. And right now, we are in the habit of, if I am a couple therapist and I see that one of the partners is hugely impacted by childhood trauma, we refer that partner to an EFIT therapist. And when we work together, it makes miracles.
Absolutely. And that
Mhm.
was the tagline. I love that we're ending on that point. When we work together, it makes miracles. Definitely.
Exactly. It does. It does.
Uh, Rosa, this has been phenomenal. I'm so glad that you came on.
Me too.
And I'm glad that we have your website so people can find you. We'll also put some information in the show notes. And for those that have been tuning in, you've been listening to the Marriage Underdogs radio show. I'm your host, Chris A. Matthews. And once again, join us next Tuesday as we drop new episodes on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. And you got it right. It'll be another LMFT. So you
Thank you so much. It was my great honor to be with you here.
Thank you. We're so glad that you had time out of your schedule to come. And we hope to have you back as well.
Sure, sure. Just call me in. You know how to find me.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye, everyone.